I am Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And we're paranormal specialists who live in the most haunted city on earth, Savannah, Georgia. Every day is Halloween in our line of work, so join us as we spin true tales of haunts, murders, and disturbing Savannah history. I'm Madison.
I'm Chris.
And welcome to the most haunted city on earth.
The Siege.
Yes.
That's how we're going to refer to it from here on out.
The Siege.
The Siege.
The Siege.
All right. That'll be the intro.
Yeah, I'm probably just going to keep what we're talking about right now. We've already started the podcast.
Okay, cool.
That's fair.
All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Most Haunted City on Earth. My name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Susie.
And today we are going to be talking about the bloodiest hour and just the entire battle for the most part, the Siege of Savannah. Or, JT, you can edit in right here.
The Siege. I'll just do it.
Yes.
There you
The
go.
Siege.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know nothing
That's how we get
about
kicked off the
this.
trolleys, the history tours.
Yes.
JT riding around. The Siege.
That's exactly it.
He stands in the middle of the Spring Hill Redoubt, and as we pass by, oh, God.
The Siege.
Yes. So the Siege of Savannah, the reason why we wanted to talk about this, one, because it's a very bloody and gruesome battle.
And we know you guys like bloody and gruesome.
Yes. But also because we are currently in its anniversary right now.
That is true.
Yes. Yes.
And we're recording this podcast near it.
Yes,
Yeah, very,
we are.
very
We are
close.
actually in the redoubt
We are
when it
in-
comes down to it. Spring Hill is right there. It's
Yeah.
literally right there. And so this entire area was flooded by the revolutionary soldiers who were trying to retake Savannah. People think that the Battle of Savannah or the Siege of Savannah, the Siege of Savannah, there's two different things. The Siege of Savannah was about the British coming in and taking over Savannah. Actually, the British did that pretty quickly and soundly.
successfully. Yeah.
And this was the American forces that gathered back together with Casimir Pulaski and tried to retake Savannah and failed. Which is weird because it's not covered a lot. They don't talk about it because it was a loss. It was an American loss. And it was a catastrophic one at that.
Yeah. Especially in a place like Savannah, where we've talked about this a million times, where Savannah's like, not a good look for us. So
Not
it's
a
like,
great look for us, so
Yeah.
we'll just powder right over that.
Yeah, especially because the most accurate number that I've been able to find on the siege thus far, because there's so many varying numbers because of nature of the battle, of how many people died. The most accurate I've found is 1,200 French, American, and Haitian soldiers. And that would happen for the most part all over the west side of Savannah. It was not just this condensed area. So actually all the way out to like towards even, Garden City even.
Really?
Oh yeah.
It was, the entire encampment of the revolutionary forces were gathered and throughout, and the Hessians, who were the basically the very powerful force that the British had employed, were notorious
mercenaries, right?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
For just slaughtering people. They were
Yes.
good at it. As a matter of fact, the headless horseman was supposedly a Hessian soldier of the Revolutionary War who got his head cut off. That story is so widely accepted as the Hessians were just these fierce professional soldiers. And the revolutionaries were a ragtag group of people who were protecting their farmlands and conscripted in ways that they didn't fully understand.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden they were facing a wall of professional soldiers. So yeah.
Yeah, and to give you the dates of when this happened, it was September 16th, 1779, up until October 18th, 1779.
And so it was full of skirmishes, full of interactions, and full of attempts at big invasions. There was attempts at pushes into Savannah, and one of the bloodiest days boiled down to an hour of
Yep.
intense and horrible fighting. In one account, they said that the bodies were just stacked up and damming the small canal
Yeah.
right here. Like if we walked out this building and up the street just a little, we could see the canal that they were
that
talking
canal.
about. Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
one by the highway?
Yeah.
Yep.
What?
Oh, yeah.
my gosh. There were that many.
Yeah. They
So if
dammed
you
it
go
up, yeah.
digging,
1,200. Okay.
you could probably, although it might have dissolved.
So
okay.
here's
Heard.
so if you so here's the thing about the bodies. When you have that many dead, and this is not uncommon in war, it's to have to bury your dead where they fell, especially back in these earlier times of battles and things like that. It was very, very common for them to dig trenches and make them into makeshift mass graves because they did not have time to collect all their dead and give them a proper burial and all that. So there are trenches scattered all over the west side of Savannah. One of the ones that most people know about it was found under the Sorrel Weed House. So the Sorrel Weed House was built in, what was it, 1840, something like
Yes.
that? Yeah, so because of that, when they were doing restoration on the house had been built on top of one of those trenches.
And they believe that those were the Hessian and British.
Yep.
Because that was probably one of the forward lines of the trenches that they built, and they called it the Hessian encampment.
Yep.
And so they did. They recovered like uniform pieces
Yep.
and equipment.
Wow.
From the Revolutionary War.
So Sorrel Weed House is not just only haunted
No.
by, like the people that have inhabited it and have died inside of it. It's also
it was a site
yeah.
of strategic battles.
just
yeah.
just a side note. Our series, the pilot episode, is on the Sorrel Weed House. So we'll definitely go into that a little bit more, which is one of the most haunted houses in America, and we got exclusive access. But anyway, sorry.
But yeah, so they
Gotta plug
recovered like what they think was up to 40 bodies underneath that house, which is insane, but not uncommon.
No.
So, that one TikTok that honestly, one of the TikToks that really blew this podcast up was my little story about them finding bones grown into the roots of the live oaks on Liberty Street. And so there was a lot of people in the comments saying like, well, whose bones were it? Who were the people that had those bones? Who did they belong to? And so the thing is where those were located. Yes, it could have been some other people. You never know with Savannah, with the nature of the city. But because of the location, it more than likely was soldiers from the Siege of Savannah. Their bones have been, found in those roots because it's probably built on top of some type of trench, or they were just buried there. I don't think it really gets too deep into like they put a tree marker or anything like that. They just happen to be there.
I mean, there was a period of time when finding bones and finding remains in Savannah was so just kind of a commonplace thing that
we just found some.
Yeah, we just literally found some this week.
It's always fun
last
when we
week.
find remains.
Yeah.
So, but
On Friday.
because they were doing renovations and they're doing a lot of work along Broughton Street, and so you're going to turn up bones, and the question always, well, whose bones are they? There's really honestly no way to tell. You can try to figure it out, but ultimately, there were all forms of mass graves. A lot of people took to burying family members on their own land. A lot of people took to, just burying people where they fall. Also worth noting that a lot of times when slaves passed away, they didn't get a proper burial. They were just buried in the most convenient place to put them.
Yeah.
There wasn't an actual graveyard for a long time. So the ideas of tracing it are very weird, but wherever you go in Savannah, there's a good chance you're walking over bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is if there were bodies piled up and buried over by that ravine over there, we're literally 100 feet away from it.
Well, the thing was they had to clear up the ravine in order to let the water flow again.
Yeah.
So they pulled the body out. So it's all the way over.
That's what I was just about to ask. Do you think we're talking about these people? Literally, they are under us,
They very possibly
I do
could
not
be.
doubt
under
it.
this
Yeah.
building.
Yeah, because you try to imagine that the
Oh, that's creepy.
they talk about this
Yeah.
all the time, which is the Spring Hill Redoubt. The Spring Hill Redoubt was not huge. Spring Hill is
Yeah.
not. Savannah doesn't have hills. We'll
Yeah.
start right there. So
We're flat.
when you talk about a couple of thousand people fighting, it's not in this small little location. It's all up and down here. So people fell and died. I guarantee you, right here.
Wow.
Where we are right now was a battlefield. This was all a battlefield, and battles were very peculiar back then because the British fought in a very regimented way. The Americans originally started that way, but turned to a more guerrilla style fighting, and the Hessians would just mow people down. Mm-hmm. They just charged in. And of course, Casimir Pulaski died during the Siege of Savannah. And wherever you're listening from, you may have heard of Pulaski. I know that there's a song about Pulaski. I know that there's, in the Midwest, a lot of people have Pulaski monuments and Pulaski
There's a
things.
Square.
And we have two. We have a square and a monument to Pulaski here, and his remains.
Yeah.
Which was contested for a long time. There are people in Europe who stated that his remains were actually shipped home. So we actually unearthed the remains about 10 years ago, and we took a look at them, and we're like, yeah, I guess that's him.
Sounds about right.
it's somebody. And then, and so now the Pulaski remains, which were in the monument or under the monument, are now under a slab next to the monument for easy access in case somebody else wants to complain about the location of Pulaski.
So we're over these bones and these burials. It makes me feel like, just by making this podcast episode that we're potentially
we're about to pull out some equipment soon, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, seriously.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, this area is so haunted for so many reasons, and a lot of people forget that because of the nature of the siege, and then also it being, swamp. It was a good place for people to hide. It was a good place for hiding bodies
slaves,
if you wanted,
and criminals, and there was a very vibrant criminal syndicate in Savannah during Prohibition. Mm-hmm. So, we saw the Hars brothers, classic gangsters, just nasty stuff going on. Mm-hmm. And always worth noting that battlefield ghosts are different in a lot of ways. And that is because in many cases, you're dealing with people who were living a regimented life, who were living a life of revelry and retreat, and they had to appear on time in specific places in specific ways. So a lot of times when people see battlefield ghosts, they're marching, they're walking shoulder to shoulder. Wow. They see them in that situation where they're leading into it, and the deaths in combat are full of sudden and terrible deaths, and they're young.
Yeah.
To keep in mind that many of these soldiers who die are young, and aside from everything else, the projected lifespan that is interrupted suggests the power of the spirit. If you were cut down very young and you had all this life ahead of you, that's how much potential your spirit carries with it.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that becomes an interesting gauge. We talk about children ghosts being so powerful, and it's because there's a whole world of possibilities that was, infused in their very being. Mm-hmm. And when they died young, all that potential became energy. Mm-hmm. Not to take too far a side tangent, but I think if you're a Doctor Who fan, that is the concept of a weeping angel. A weeping angel takes your life, but lives off of your potential, the potential of your life.
Oh, that's cool.
And that is such a fascinating concept because that is when a young person dies, when they're murdered, when something happens tragic and sudden, versus like long illnesses and things like that. When you prepare for death, oftentimes you make your peace. Sure. But when it happens very suddenly, you didn't have that opportunity. You didn't have that opportunity to reckon your life or to recognize that your potential was not forever. Yeah. Because when you're young, you're immortal. You don't sense death. You don't sense the end.
I have a question for y'all. I see people walking around where the battle happened in uniform all the time because I'm always over here,
Like actors,
and that's
to clarify, not the ghosts.
That's what I was going to ask. How can you tell the difference? How can you tell the difference between
Not always.
someone reenacting it?
Many times you
versus-
can't.
I wonder if some of those were ghosts, and I'm just like, oh, look at the actor.
I will
he
say-
looks cool.
I will say there's a different energy that you get from a spirit versus a human. Like, because we are on two different planes, there's just this different energy that it's a gut feeling almost.
It's a gut feeling.
But, that is not cultivated in many people.
Yeah.
We had said this before. There are chances that you've seen ghosts on and off all your life.
Yeah, we have said this.
Yeah.
And you just didn't know it because not everyone's attuned to the woogity woogity feelings, which is not to say boogity boogity, but woogity woogity.
Woogity woogity.
A woogity
What's
woogity
the
feeling.
difference? Yeah,
A boogie boogie is when somebody jumps out. Boogity boogity.
Okay.
A woogity woogity is inside. It's internalized. You're like, oh, I feel a woogity in my woogity.
There you go.
So woogity woogity is internal. Boogity boogity is external. Anyway,
But
not the point. The point is,
Yeah.
if you're not used to it, you might experience something paranormal and not be able to iterate it or even acknowledge it. Because, I know that in my life I've walked by people and gotten a very sudden, sensation. And I imagine that it is just an accumulation of my own personal biases and whatever in my brain. Something just clicked. But it's also possible that was a ghost or that was a person with such ill intent or ill sensation or feeling. But I have no cultivation of any of that sensation. All I knew was somebody gave me the heebie-jeebies.
the woogity woogities.
The woogity woogities.
So the heebie-jeebies do fit into the woogity woogity category, as do the willies, but we don't talk about the willies.
I will say, though, that there is a hotel right next to the redoubt, like the little hill and whatnot that they've built. And so many people, but especially children, are the ones that have been the ones to see the soldiers marching around the area and things like that. I think my favorite spirit, though, that people have reported is a Haitian soldier that stands out in the field. And a lot of times it's usually people who have military backgrounds who see him. And if you salute the soldier, he salutes you back. It's really cool. Yeah.
Next time I see, because I see him all the time, next time I do it, I'm going to film the soldier, and I'm going to literally yell, "Hey, man, you a ghost?" and see what they do.
Sure, that works.
Yeah.
That is how you get weird looks from people who are not ghosts.
And that's fine.
You a
I'm
ghost?
Cool. I don't.
You a ghost?
I'm cool
Yo,
with the
wait.
weird looks.
You a ghost? You got to tell me if you're a ghost. It's the law.
It's the
It's
law.
the law.
It's JT law.
JT law.
Well, I've always, it's, we're an open carry state. So like, if someone has a gun slung around their back, it's not the most insane thing.
Right.
But I do sometimes wonder, these people, they're always carrying guns. Always. And they're muskets, they're muskets.
Yeah, they're long guns.
But
long
it
rifles.
makes me like think back to it. So basically what I'm saying is when I see someone carrying a gun and it's like slung around their back, if it's in their hands, then we got an issue. But if it's like slung around their back, it's not the craziest thing. But when I see, that's why I've ignored it up to this point. But now I'm wondering, where, like, was it a ghost? Because it wouldn't care that it's carrying a gun. I don't open carry. So like, if I have a musket, I am gonna leave it where I need to leave it, and I'm gonna walk around in my uniform if I'm an actor. Personally,
But
I'm just not gonna freak people out.
But I think
like
that's the museum that has them do that because they do demonstrations.
They're just walking around.
Yeah.
When I see them,
Well,
I mean, literally, like going to get a sandwich, but with their musket. It's like
Well, yeah,
that.
those are
They're not
expensive
doing.
things.
Yeah.
You don't want to just leave
Sure.
these expensive props.
Yeah.
You would
just
think
anywhere.
don't take the gun though.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
think there'd be an armory or an armory.
You
You
would
think
think.
exactly.
But yeah, there's also some interesting artifacts from the siege that people don't talk about, including the cannonball that was at the Maritime Museum.
Maritime Museum, yeah.
Yeah.
You still have it?
they have the portion. They should have the cannonball still. I know they removed it from the wall.
Yeah, it was in the wall.
Yeah,
They removed it from the wall.
yeah.
Why?
So let me tell the story.
Okay, yeah, tell the story. Sorry.
During the siege, that house used to be the Sheffield house, I believe. No, the Scarborough house. Excuse me. So it was the Scarborough mansion, and so basically, a cannonball got lodged into the side of the wall of the home. And they left it there. Mm-hmm. And then it went missing for a period of time when they did restoration on the home, but then they found it again. And so now they took the portion of the wall, and it's either in that museum or it is in another museum somewhere. But it is an interesting artifact because there's not a ton of artifacts left from the siege. Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of like the only one.
Right.
But it is like a full-on cannonball.
No way.
Yeah.
Should I hit him up and be like, hey, can we come do like a little thing about
Can we poke the cannonball?
for
Can we poke
the
the cannonball?
Parajunkies?
Because that's all we want
Honestly,
to do is poke the
I
cannonball.
think Parajunkies.
I feel
Actually,
like
the Museum of America is a great place to go anyway.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's
Good
an
story.
interesting artifact, and a lot of people don't know about it because, I mean, like, they don't really tell that
it's
on
interesting
tours
because,
and stuff.
If you go out to Fort Jackson and by river, you can see all of the cannon damage. That isn't from the Revolutionary War, but it's fascinating to see all this impact. Like this was they meant business. This was true and brutal war. Mm-hmm. Modern warfare is horrifying, but it's very rarely face to face. It's very rarely in your face. And this was shoot once and then use your bayonet because you don't have the time to reload when you have 1,000 people charging up a hill.
Sure.
And that is really a lot of where I think the Americans were losing ground was in that charge. When you get face to face, not everyone has the capacity to just go stabbing people.
True.
Yeah.
No matter how trained you are, there is still a capacity to not do it. And the Revolutionary soldiers on America's side were not the highest trained soldiers. They were not, the Continental Army was not known for long-term training. There were great professional soldiers, great leaders, but when you get down onto the ground, even the Haitians that came in to fight, which is a whole other thing that is worth discussing, is that the Haitian influx into Savannah was not slaves. Mm-hmm. It was
they were not,
these revolutionary fighters. And so the voodoo culture of Savannah is a separate thing from the root doctoring Gullah Geechee factor. So, it's an interesting back and forth because we had the slaves from Angola, but we also had these soldiers up from Haiti.
No way.
Yeah.
Sweet. So that wasn't a slavery thing at all. Were they mercenary? Like what? Why were they? Why
Yes,
did
they were conscribed.
Yeah.
And to suggest that they weren't slaves is more to say, they were soldiers from Haiti who came here and fought here and remained, as a cultural component in Savannah. And then, of course, that will feed into the Sorrel Weed House because Francis Sorrel was raised in Haiti and came
Do we know any
plantations.
descendants from those Haitian soldiers? Because I would love to have them on the show to talk about it. That's so interesting.
I don't know any
but there are
personally.
some people who dedicate themselves to the reenactment of the Haitian.
Yeah.
I think there was a man. I think it was Jamaican, but he definitely embodied and tried to present the Haitian part of it. But that's worth research.
It's an interesting fact because a lot of times when you take tours and they talk about the Siege of Savannah, they only talk about the French and American soldiers that fought.
The Haitian.
They were a major part of it.
A monument to the Haitian soldiers on outside of Vinny's.
In City Market.
Oh, City Market?
Yeah.
Oh, I've never seen it. I've been to City Market a million times.
You've probably seen it. You just didn't realize it.
Yeah, I'm not really a guy that goes up to the statues and looks what they are, especially if I've lived around them my entire life. It's kind of weird
Yeah.
that I don't. But
And another interesting little tidbit too about the cannonball that I just remembered is at the Scarborough Mansion is during the 1920s. I actually was an auto garage for a period of time, and the reason why it got lost is because the guy who owned the garage used the cannonball as a form of advertisement. Because yes, Savannah has not changed that much, so they were still using things historical to attract visitors and attract business. And so he was the one who lost it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
oh no.
Yeah. And so it was more recent, recent as in like not 100 years ago.
Right. 20th century.
Yeah. That they found the cannonball again. So
Cool.
I forgot to mention that, but I think that is an interesting.
That is. I have going back to the bones and the fact that they're like literally under us. It's still like creeping me out that we're talking about. It's like I don't know. It's like talking about a dead person at their grave in a way,
which we have done.
Well, we've done it. Yeah, we did do it. Yeah, if you want to check out that mobile
Greenbrier
podcast,
Ghost.
the Greenbrier Ghost, we did that. That was also very eerie, although gorgeous. I mean, beautiful. West Virginia. Wow, go visit. It's one of the least visited states. Just a side note, go visit it. It's really cool.
It's a little middle state.
Yeah, and they have horrendous tolls. But
so
if
turn
you
on
can
your
get through
tolls
that-
off thing.
Yeah, turn your tolls off. Yeah, that's what we did. We didn't pay a single toll, but
But it took them 22 hours.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it did. It did. But it's again absolutely fantastic state. Go check it out. But that was the Greenbrier Ghost. But yeah, hold on. Going back to it. The bones.
Bones.
Are there things like a metal detector as a bone detector? Because I would love to go around. This is the piece of land. My point is, okay, you don't know this, Chris.
I'm listening.
There is a hole over there. There's a hole. We call it. What do we call it? The ghost hole. The body hole. It's something. We call it something creepy.
Yeah.
You can literally lift the door and go under the building.
Oh, yeah.
And there's a ton of snakes and spiders down there, so we just don't do it.
I would imagine that actually a metal detector would work in the sense that the metal of whatever they were wearing is probably going to last longer than a lot of the other things. As far as
Madison,
like
I'm going to spend $400 on a metal detector.
Lord.
I'm so sorry. Anyway,
you can get it for $89.
a good one.
Right. I was going to say was you can use echolocation. You can use those. They send sound waves into the ground and they bring back. But that's
Sure.
thousands upon thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I don't got that.
So, yeah.
But yeah, is there a bone detector though?
No, there is no bone detector.
There's no bone
But like I
detector.
said, these people were buried usually in uniform, so there's buckles, buttons.
Yeah.
In 2017, somebody found a human jawbone with a metal detector, not in Savannah, but somewhere. So it is possible.
Wow. They have metal teeth.
Yeah, that's the only way
I would assume so. But I mean, like it's, gold teeth.
Gold teeth, yeah.
Gold
Yeah.
teeth.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah. Which is not
and
impossible.
It's not
so-
impossible, although if you're looking for Revolutionary era artifacts, I don't think any of them had gold teeth.
Yeah, I mean,
Honestly, let's just go digging.
our listeners, for our listeners,
right here, there is a path, like into this overgrowth.
It's-
Have you
yeah,
been
it's
down
super
there?
dangerous.
It's super dangerous.
it's
Yeah.
super dangerous.
I know, but if you
Like-
wanted to go looking,
Yeah,
that's where you
Could.
look.
Yeah.
yeah, no, for
Because
sure.
that's undisturbed. It's been undisturbed for so long.
It's
Yeah.
about to be
That-
disturbed.
Yeah, somebody's
Yeah.
gonna build. It's only a matter of time.
They're building the road.
Yeah, they're
No,
building a road
there.
to
That's
the-
why she said that.
Yeah, to the stadium.
They're building the road to the stadium right over there.
I mean,
So they might find something for us. So
yeah,
you
that's
never
true.
know.
They'll be digging up bodies left and right.
Yeah,
Then you
true.
could just go
But-
over to the piles of dirt
I
and
mean,
sift.
for just where we're legally allowed to dig, like, where without getting in trouble,
This
is
is
literally
parking lot.
right around here. The whole parking lot, we have access to the whole parking lot and the back. Y'all might be like, where's JT? And I'm just back there with the shovel.
Taken away.
Yeah, I would not be
It's
surprised
so
if you
interesting.
found
I'd love
musket
to find some
balls.
stuff. Musket balls?
Yeah,
Oh,
various bits of equipment.
Yeah.
oh. Maybe we should do like a metal, like when I get my
archaeological
metal
dig.
detector. Yeah, when I get my metal detector, maybe we should do like a video on what we find around here for
That'd be
for
interesting.
Patreon. But
I know
that could be really
several
cool.
people who would help us who
Yeah.
have metal detectors. So
Oh,
we can-
cool. Yeah, that would be amazing.
can pull
We should
in-
do a dig.
Yeah, we can do a dig.
We're
can
going
do
to
a
turn
dig.
into archaeologists now.
We're not podcasters anymore. We're archaeologists.
That's right.
This keeps morphing.
We'll just call it
Pivot.
the dig.
Yes. The
Welcome
dig.
to the dig.
The dig.
Today we found a penny. A 1947 penny.
More than they
So-
found in that ADAC documentary.
Hey, they found. Well, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
gonna spoil it. I'm not gonna spoil it. Watch it. I enjoyed it.
I did too.
enjoyed
It's
it.
just funny.
So, are there any famous ghosts from the Siege of Savannah that, like, anyone that, like, kind of like how Alice Riley is, like, you just see him. So we know the Haitian soldier. Is there any soldier that we know other than that, or like a captain or
I wouldn't
a
say
Hessian?
so. I mean, seeing
Yeah.
soldiers is probably the extent of it.
Okay.
There was a time when people were trying to make the Kazimierz Pulaski ghost a thing. It is not a thing. Simply because we don't
Stop
we
trying to
can't-
make fetch happen.
Yeah,
we
right.
can't
Stop trying to make-
identify. Like, if you see someone in a revolutionary uniform, our ability to recognize them is gone. It's
Yeah.
like we do not have the ability to look at somebody and say, "Oh, look, it's Kazimierz Pulaski." I think it would take a military historian to recognize his
I would
uniform and all
agree.
those things. So, no, I don't think there is a famous, revolutionary ghost here. However, I have heard countless stories of people seeing, and it's interesting because most of the accounts of the ghost I've seen is the Haitian soldier.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Haitian soldier seems to be the one that most people have reported and talked about, and they see him. And he's passive. He's incredibly passive. He's not. He's just standing wherever people encounter him, and a lot of people think that he's a costumed actor. Is the story? And the classic story goes, they're walking along MLK, and they see him standing on the grounds, the battlegrounds as we know them, and as they walk past him, they do a double take, maybe to get a picture or something, and he's just gone.
Wow.
But they have this very solid, they could describe him, they could talk about. And the interesting thing was, for a long time, when people saw this ghost, they would describe his uniform, and people would be like, that's not a uniform that any of us wore. That is not a revolutionary, that is not. And then it turned out that somebody did a lot of digging and found out that the Haitians wore an entirely different uniform than the Continental Army. And it was, and the descriptions that everyone was getting were the descriptions. So I want to say it wasn't that long ago that they started retrofitting the outfits for the reenactments, so that the Haitian soldiers were wearing a more historically accurate.
Yeah. Now, was he bleeding? Is he bleeding? Is
No.
he?
Nope.
There's nothing about, like, his face being torn off or anything
Nope.
like that.
Unfortunately, no, Jay.
Yeah, it's just not a gory mess of anything.
What's a bloody battle?
I will say.
It was a bloody battle. It was, but in a lot of cases, with soldiers, a lot of them don't know they're dead. It happened so quickly, or it happened so abruptly that they don't actually carry their mortal wounds because they were unaware of their mortal wounds. Now, and this is an interesting point. A lot of times, when people see like a bloody soldier, they actually see a bloody soldier with wraps, meaning that they survived whatever hit them and that they died from their wounds. So they see the bandage, the bloody bandage, or they have been cared for on the battlefield, which means they lived through the trauma and died of it. Which again brings us to this interesting point of, if the ghost doesn't know that it's damaged, it probably doesn't show.
Yeah.
But if you see a ghost that's all messed up, that means they died in knowledge of their pain, in knowledge of the damage that they took.
Wow.
Which is fascinating, because that brings us to the very interesting stories of headless ghosts.
Yep.
Because a headless ghost, and I've always been a critic of headless ghosts, because I'm like, how? Why?
Yeah.
Should I be afraid of it? Can it see me? No, it doesn't have a head. It's just a body. It's not going to. What's it going to do? And it's like it's looking for its head. Well, how's it going to find it? You would think that the head would be floating around looking for the body, not the body looking for the head. So the dormant stand-up comedian in me always thinks headless ghosts. Blah. But the terrifying notion is, and this is something that had been discussed at length. Decapitation was actually one of the execution methods used in the United States or available in the United States for a long time.
Sure.
The last use of the guillotine was in 1976. So it was not that long ago.
What?
Like we're talking like when Star Wars
You
came
said
out.
1976?
Yes. When Star Wars came out, the guillotine was still in practical use.
Oh my God.
So
Where?
France. So
That sounds about
with
right.
that in mind, the argument was because of the nature of decapitation, how long does it take for the brain to stop functioning?
Right. Yeah.
And they determined that it takes long enough for the brain to stop functioning to deem it cruel and unusual punishment to decapitate a person because the capacity to go into shock is gone. Because the body is not regulating anything, just the nerves going off. So your brain is still working. It still has some a cognitive ability. And the big one was, and I want to say they did this in St. Augustine, where they decapitated a person and asked the head questions.
Oh my
and was
God.
like, blink if you do this, and stuff
it
like
blinked?
that.
Did it blink?
Yes, but that's not. I don't think that's conclusive. But it was enough for them to feel that decapitation was somehow even more cruel than because they thought it was quick, painless, and that was it.
Yeah.
But if your head is just in a basket, like going, oh no, oh gosh, my neck hurts, what's going on? Whatever is going on in the brain, and you hear estimates like you have like 30 seconds. 30 seconds is a long time.
Yeah.
Before you kind of lose, the ability. Some people say it's up to 11 minutes.
Ooh.
11 minutes, your brain might still be firing. And
Wow.
Because when you die, when your body shuts down and your brain shuts down to protect, all this vital, trauma, when you lose all the information from your body, they're suggesting perhaps that the brain is still processing every nerve in your body, trying to fire, trying to find, like phantom pains, trying to locate the body. And that lends credence to the headless ghost.
Okay.
Is that after being decapitated, there is a period of time when the body knows, the mind knows it's been severed. And so the ghost can have no head because it has a recollection of being alive without a head. I'm like, that's messed up.
That is so messed up.
So messed up.
Wow.
And and that does not go to say that is the absolute truth of it or anything like that, because I think there are lots of stories of people featuring their gunshot wounds that they couldn't possibly have known happened to them. So, that's just a neither here nor there. It's just an interesting thing that a lot of times when people see like soldiers who are haunting a place, they are wounded, but they're usually bandaged, or they are perfectly clean.
Yeah.
Those are your two.
Yeah. Those are the
You're like this perfectly clean, or you're battle worn and tired, and it looks like you've been through hell.
So why would they have cut the heads off? Like other than the obvious, like they're fighting and they just literally get a perfectly clean sweep.
So in many
was
cases,
there any desecration of the like
that's an interesting concept. So like in classic form, there's at least 3 stories I know of people having their head taken off by a cannon.
Okay.
The cannonball just popped their head right off. Breaking down into hand-to-hand combat, the higher officers carried sabers. Sabers had a curved blade, and their purpose of a curved blade is to cut through the limb.
Okay.
So, a skilled saber fighter could conceivably decapitate you with a swing of a saber.
Wow.
So, there is...
That makes sense.
Situations by which people could lose their heads.
Okay.
There is a headless ghost in Savannah.
Somewhat.
It's in one of the bed and breakfasts. I know that's
Just
weird.
Savannah things.
Just Savannah things.
It's in one of the bed. The headless ghost is in one of the bed and breakfast.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
That is so
And there's a
funny.
headless ghost out in the States for over.
And I love that you said it so like we're all just numb to it at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
Like there's a headless ghost in the
headless ghost in
bed.
the
Yeah.
Like we're just so numb to it being in the most haunted city on earth. It's so funny.
I will say, like with soldier spirits, there actually is one that a lot of people don't know about that is in the old, is located at the Gribble House property, which is now the trolley car barn. But when I worked for that company for that time, I was very familiar with this soldier spirit because he hates women a lot.
Really?
A lot.
Yeah.
And so when I was being trained, because during December, they would run a Christmas tour out of that car barn. And so I was a manager at the time. And so because the ghost tours were slower in December, it's always slow. In December, they had me going in managing the Christmas tours, which meant I needed to be in that property by myself a lot. And so obviously encountered Maggie Hunter the most. But when I was being trained, my manager was like, do you see this room right over here? Or like my higher up, I should say, was like, you see this room over here? And I was like, yeah. And he goes, don't go in there. And I was like, why? And he goes, oh, well, there's a spirit from the American Revolutionary War and he hates women. And I was like, okay, do tell me more about this and why, like, what does he do? And so this manager's girlfriend at the time had been working for the company for a long time, back when they used to do investigations in the Gribble House. And so pretty much she went in there one time and she got attacked by the spirit. It locked her into the room and attacked her.
Really?
Yes. And so, and that happened to multiple women who went into this room, where they would report having the door slam behind them, and they would see the figure of the soldier and he would charge at them and grab them, essentially leaving bruises and scratches on their arms.
I think it was like a psychopath or...
No, I don't think it was. I think he was just like a ridiculously evil...
It's like one of those men's rights activists.
Well,
T.
you know,
Yeah.
it's interesting because certainly the concept of a woman on the battlefield would be enraging. And you take into account the long superstitions that stand in most militaries, especially naval people who believe that women were bad luck. To have a woman like in your camp would be incredibly bad luck. Yeah. And I would imagine that we're dealing with the Hessian, a Hessian.
That's what I
Hessians
thought.
Were a long
Yeah.
tradition of severe military action, and the idea of who would have that visceral response to a female in the area of operation. You know, because I want to say that even like having females nurse soldiers in some instances were met with heavy resistance for fear that the feminine energy would weaken the soldier. So, you know, it is very likely that we're dealing with, you know, somebody who was raised in the concept of war being a man's territory, and that an encroaching woman would bring loss, would bring, you know.
Yeah. Well, I hope Maggie Hunter gives her a piece of her mind.
Oh my gosh. Maggie Hunter doesn't really linger in that area. So like the thing is with Maggie Hunter, people love to make her into this boogeyman, and it's just not it. It's really not. She was actually like dope. I loved her. She hangs out in her spot. She hated the Christmas music. She hated it, and I don't blame her. It was it was really annoying. But she would oftentimes turn off. They gave us this crappy it wasn't even an iPod. It was something you get on Amazon. And basically it costs like $10, and it only will play like a couple things if you download it onto the thing. So it would play like the same 5 Christmas songs over and over and over and over again. It was awful. And so she would often like literally just drain the battery on that thing every night to get it to stop. And I was like,
good for her.
And I was like, good for you, girl. But also, she was interesting because she interacted with me a lot. I tend to forget my things a lot in places because I put my water bottle down, I put my jacket down, and I go and do my tasks, and then I'll walk out and I'm like so ready to go home that I'll forget my water bottle. and especially that. And so I would have to turn on the security alarm every single night before I left because I was the last person there. And so I would go to turn on, I put in the code and it wouldn't work. And I would try it for like 10 minutes, like even call like my boss. I'm like, hey, why is this not working? And then I would get this voice in my head saying like, you forgot your water bottle. And I was like, okay. And I was like, oh, I did forget my water bottle. I go and grab my stuff from inside the car barn. I go back and the security code works.
Wow.
And she would do this to me all the time. And I was like, thanks, bro. Thanks, gal. You know, and I feel like that's more of her presence. Now, that is not to say she is not very sensitive to her trauma from her life because she died in a really horrific way. And
if you don't know that story, you can check it out.
yeah, watch her Gribble House
story.
Yeah, but yeah, she died in a really horrific way, and she's definitely very sensitive to the anniversary. I worked that evening. The vibe in that building is just very somber, and also just like kind of angry, and rightfully so.
Sure.
But really, she's not the spirit that people like to make her out to be, where she charges at people and she scratches people and all that. And I'm like,
Sounds like the soldier.
Yeah,
that's what I'm
exactly what it
thinking.
sounds
And it's like, and you know, that the Haitian soldier, anytime I went by that room, I was like, ugh, it felt like the air in the room just sucked out, you know, like you just felt like you couldn't breathe.
You said the Haitian? Oh, the Hessian.
The Hessian.
Not the Haitian. Okay.
Yeah.
Not the Hessian.
Yeah, the Hessian soldier. And it literally, anytime you went by that room, and the door always stayed shut because I was not trying to go in there. I was like, you know, I'm like, no, there was no need for me to be really in there. And it was weird too, because nobody kept anything in that room either. There was a chair and that was it, because nobody wanted to go in there because that spirit was so violent. And they're
really?
not, they're not the only
tightly located too. Really asks questions, you know. Because now it's like he seems trapped in a small, confined space. I wonder if he was a prisoner of war.
Yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Maybe. That's interesting.
It's very interesting.
That
Well,
is
because
interesting.
when you have such tight location, because it's not like that building was there at the time. It's not
Exactly.
like, you know,
This was before the Gribble House was built there.
Way
when
before.
When you imagine how they must have fortified the front, it would have been on the British Hessian side.
Yeah.
So it does bring up that was it his command tent? Was it was it the latrine? Was he just like, get out?
Yeah.
Occupied.
That's the reverse version of the bathroom ghost, but you know, but yeah, and they're not the only two spirits on that property. I mean, there are tons of things lingering there.
Because right across the street is the Civic Center, all through that Civic Center area, all across that area. It's a highly unexplored paranormal area, mostly because the commerce there isn't very high. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of reason to, you know, and I will never understand how they could keep a location as fantastic as the Gribble House, a car barn, without at least imagining its significance to people who are interested in this.
Sure.
You know, this particular breed of tourism is billions of dollars. And to not capitalize on it when you have a space that is so integral to the ghostiness of this town is fascinating to me. It's like, what a weird business choice.
We'll buy it. We'll buy it.
One day.
We're gonna buy it.
I would love to.
This show is going to take off even more. Everything's going to work out. We promise when we have the money.
We'll buy that.
We will buy that
from
area.
That big old company.
I would love to.
I would too.
And recreate the Gribble House. That'd be amazing.
Well, we'd have to be delicate with it because, you know, honestly, I feel like just from my time with Maggie Hunter, I feel like she kind of likes the peace.
Yeah, I'm sure.
You know,
I'm absolutely sure. And, you know, in my estimation, what this town needs is a concentrated place for the examination of supernatural, paranormal, and folklore. So I would strongly suggest the creation of a museum of some type that focuses solely on folklore,
I agree.
ghost stories, paranormal, and just
we should create it.
Absolutely.
I mean, you would be the best museum curator of all freaking time for something like that.
That's true.
I would literally, if I was the executive producer of that, and I got to choose who, you know, goes to what roles. which is a possibility if we end up buying it, I would be like, please, Chris, take that role because you would be so perfect.
All right, listeners,
So perfect.
this is the plan. All right.
Yeah.
Yes, join
Get
us.
1 million of your friends to send $1,
Yes.
and then we will buy.
The Gribble House property.
Actually, given Savannah real estate, get 1 million of your friends to send $10.
Right.
Yeah.
Bruh.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
But and ultimately, that concept needs a home in the Southeast. I don't think there is
I
a
think we need to
focused
do it.
paranormal museum in the Southeast, and so much of our culture, so much of what stands of the slave culture and the influx of the European Irish culture here, they all brought their respective superstitions and beliefs, and those things adapted into our everyday
Absolutely.
culture. So I would love to see something like that.
I
I don't know that I want to be in charge
Greyface.
of it, but
Greyface is the closest thing we have.
Greyface is doing an amazing job.
They're doing great.
But they stick. They have a wider spread, so
they
they're telling stories from all around the world, and they have collected such a variety of true crime and occult artifacts that.
It's
That's
just my
the chair.
chair.
That's the chair.
No, it's in the back room.
Oh. Well, it's Soldier.
Yeah.
You knew it. It's going to happen.
But Greyface is so
Madison.
amazing. Oh yeah, cool.
She's full of the
ghost tube.
Oh, boy.
We'll see.
I asked them, by the way, they hit me back. I asked them if they wanted to come on the show, and they said no.
Well, yeah.
They literally told me no,
that.
and I was like,
At least they responded.
yeah, well, yeah, I was a little offended. I'm like, you really, like, we've used your app a bunch, and I feel like, I mean, that's not really, I don't know, in capitalistic society, that's not really.
Just use the free version,
an excuse, but well, no, it's just the fact that I thought that they would jump at it because we have a ton of listeners that would be really interested in their app. That's really what I thought, and I was dead wrong.
Yeah, it's very difficult.
Yeah.
I mean, business is business.
Yeah.
And when it comes down to it,
I can usually convince anyone to do anything when it comes to something like that. I'm usually really good at it, and
this is
I
a pretty
failed
large
miserably.
company. I mean, it would be kind of akin to a restaurant saying, "Hey, Coca-Cola, give us money." and
I could
I'll sell
probably
your
get
product.
Coca-Cola. I'd go up to Atlanta, and we could work something out.
See,
Yeah.
although there was a brief period of time when I wanted to get one of those skins that you put on your car.
Yeah,
A Coca-Cola skin from the Coca-Cola company, and the conversation got pretty far.
really.
You drive around town with a Coca-Cola car, and they'll be like, "Yeah,
advertising.
we can subsidize this, blah blah blah."
That's interesting.
And then I think they ran a program,
no, yeah, of course, of course.
or they had one running somewhere else.
So Madison, you actually just had a something ghostly happen right where the battle happened. It was a couple nights ago, after you dropped everyone off from the last tour that we were doing for the Savannah Underground, and you heard the woman scream.
Oh gosh. Okay, so it was the weirdest thing I've ever heard in my life. So, typically when I hear spirits, I do want to clarify, it is a sort of like not outwardly thing, like where I'm not auditorily like hearing it from a distance. I'm hearing it like I'm picking up on it in my head usually, and I can usually hear the voice, or I'll have a word pop into my head, and that's how it goes for most people who can be clairaudient. And so the other night, I think it was last Wednesday, I had just dropped off the last group of my tours with our driver, Radar, and we'll probably have Radar come on the show at some point because she is water. Hello. All right. Yeah, maybe they're from that little drainage system.
I'm actually pretty parched, so they're probably telling me that
They're like, you need
go
to drink
some water. I put some.
You
in the
look
fridge.
dehydrated.
Yes. But anyway, so Radar and I were in the parking lot of the visitor center. There is no other cars in that parking lot besides me, my car, and Radar and I were talking as I was gathering my stuff, and we hear a woman in the distance screaming, "No, no, go away, help, no, get away. And we're like, what the?
And they didn't call the police.
Okay, no, what? Regardless, so we immediately are like, okay, that's weird. So we start looking around the parking lot, and mind you, they had just fixed all the lights in the parking lot, so it was pretty bright in the visitor center, which is pretty unusual for the visitor center. But nobody was there. So then we drive over to pretty much look up towards the sidewalk. So if you're in the visitor center and you look up, you can see the people who are walking by on the sidewalk. And we look over there, there's no one. There's nothing happening, not even a person walking by, because it was pretty late. And so we were like, okay, that's weird. We don't see anyone. So even if we called the police, we couldn't have pointed them in a direction because
Don't hurt.
Well, it didn't sound like it was a weird voice because it sounded not like a modern voice, if that makes sense. No, seriously, it did not sound like a modern human being. Sure. Yes.
Could it have been like a residual haunting from the Gribble house? Because you're right there.
So, okay, actually, interestingly enough, we'll get into that in a second. So the weird thing is Radar and I were like, okay, that was weird, whatever. Don't see anything. So we can't point the police in any direction. It's fine, and we weren't hearing the screaming anymore, and we didn't hear any struggle. So I go to start walking to my car, and Radar, she waits for me to get into my car. So she's like creeping by, just watching, waiting for me to get in the car. And suddenly we hear it again, and it's the same exact words in the same exact order. No, get away, help, get away, no. And I immediately, she opens up her window, and we both are like, did you just hear that again? And we're like, yeah. And so I get in my car, and she calls me, and she's like, do you think that's Maggie Hunter? I'm like, that does not sound like Maggie Hunter to me. Mostly because it sounded like the voice of an African-American woman, but not from modern age, because of the way the inflection was. It sounded like there was a heavy accent to it. And so we were kind of like, I was like, I don't think it's Maggie Hunter, because Maggie Hunter was extremely white. And so, that didn't seem like a thing to me. Also, that's a pretty far distance for that voice to travel. It, to me, sounded like it was up on the sidewalk. But, there could have been a residual haunting that was left behind, of somebody who even was attacked on that sidewalk at some point.
Any time in history, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that whether you think it's a ghost or not, please call the police if you hear someone screaming for help, because I'm not blaming y'all, but we did get in an argument after that, because I'm like that could have been someone actually getting hurt. And
we tried to find someone. There was no one there.
She was
Jay.
already kidnapped, possibly. I don't know.
Well,
they heard it twice.
We heard the same thing again,
Yeah.
and there was nobody there. We looked, and you can very clearly see. You don't spend enough time at the visitor center, but I do. And so when you're in the parking lot, you can very clearly see that sidewalk. It would have been hard to miss someone, in my opinion, especially because we went up to even look down the sides. We went to look. There was nobody out.
Okay.
So, because it was a Wednesday night, and so it's not like,
Savannah is, on top of everything else, notorious for drunken mayhem.
Yeah.
So investigating yourself when somebody's screaming like that, because I had a similar experience where somebody was screaming like that, rushing to them, phone in hand to call the police, come up on them, and it was just a couple of girls laughing, and they were pretending like they were being attacked.
That's a weird flex.
At midnight, in the and you're like, do you have any idea how many people probably dialed?
Yeah.
And they're like, we hope to see the cops. They're literally waiting to see if cops show up.
That's ridiculous.
That's a lot.
It's like a crying wolf, super hard.
It's an insane.
Oh my God.
Like even the other night when we were leaving Great Face, there was this screaming.
Oh yeah. Yep.
Higher.
there was this screaming. And it was so alarming because we were coming out of a ghost hunt.
Yeah.
And we heard blood-curdling screaming, some horrifying screaming. But there was such a crowd around it that there comes a point at which you're like, am I going to help? Am I going to be a help to be there?
Yep.
Or am I going to be a hindrance because I'm in the way?
Sure.
Yeah.
And, and it's like, once you have a crowd of people, all of them acknowledge. We're talking.
We're just talking about our podcast. Thank you.
It asked why.
It just asked, why are you here?
Why are you here?
Why are you here? And I don't believe in being forceful with ghosts, by the way.
Yeah.
I don't believe in being aggressive with ghosts.
Well, yeah. Oh. So we were talking about. It was like. Is it more helpful to be,
right?
Yeah.
And
not
so
participate
once
in it?
once somebody has announced that they have contacted the authorities, you oftentimes it's like the best thing to do is not be in the way because there's going to be an ambulance barreling down, and there was
Exactly.
when we got out of the way. Because we would have definitely been in the way of emergency services had we hung around and rubbernecked. So don't rubberneck.
Yeah.
But do get to a point where you can at least lay your mind to ease that whatever's going on is taken care of.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you call the cops when you can provide proper. But if you just hear something, there's a good chance that our perception is exactly that. It's like, if I can't help, then I might become a hindrance. If I can't, if I call the cops to a location, but there's nothing there for me all I can say is somebody's screaming, that person might be screaming somewhere else where they actually are. So you have to really keep in mind the functionality.
Exactly. Well, that's why we went and we looked. We wanted to see, like, if I can see the person screaming and I can tell the police, like, oh, it's this person, this is what they look like, or at least give them an exact idea of where it was. Because, like, where it sounded like it was coming from was that sidewalk, but it was the middle of the night. There's nobody out. It could have been just bouncing off the buildings, like her voice. So, it's... Finish. Okay, they want us to finish.
The time is up, and the ghosts apparently know that the time is up.
Yes. Are we, like, exactly at our time, Jay?
Yes, we're exactly.
They know our schedule now, so cool. So definitely moral of the story, at least have some idea of, like, get a grasp on the situation. In that situation, it could have been something paranormal. It was weird to say. It's weird nonetheless. And also the accent and the way the words were said
felt out of time.
Yeah, it did. It felt out of time. And so
sometimes you just have a sense of that. You just know.
Yeah. And so, interesting story, interesting experience, but up for debate.
Right there on the readout.
Absolutely. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this conversation. It was a lot of fun to talk about. The Siege of Savannah was definitely a gruesome time in Savannah's history, and we are, appropriately talking about it during its anniversary. So hopefully you guys learned some stuff about it. If you have any topics that you want us to cover, please feel free to reach out to us and let us know what you would like to hear from us. But with that, my name is Madison Timmons.
I'm Chris Soucy.
And stay spooky, y'all.